Hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Y- Yes, absolutely. Let's just go ahead and get into it if you don't mind.
I'm ready to go.
Awesome. So, to my audience, thank you so much to tuning in to the Kathy Barnette Show. I appreciate you guys so much. And today I wanted to do a follow up. Many of you know him. We've all seen him in the recesses of our mind, but his battle continues. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about Ian Smith. He is an entrepreneur and former co owner of Attila's Gym in Belmar, New Jersey. Did I pronounce the gym's name correctly, Ian?
Yes, you did.
Awesome. Now, that's who he is. You and I know him as the New Jersey gym owner who was arrested after ignoring Governor Murphy's mandates to lock down and close non-essential businesses back in 2020. I read a couple of different reports, Ian. It said you were fined up to $1.2 million for not locking down. Is that accurate?
We were fined actually more than that. It was $15,497.76 per day for every day that we were open in violation of the court order. So do 15,497.76 times 8 months or 9 months of days
Wow.
and whatever that is. We stopped counting after it hit $1 million.
Yeah, after $1 million, it's
Yeah,
like, hey, what?
it just
A
it becomes
million, a
monopoly money
hundred
at that point.
thousand. I
Yeah,
know.
exactly. It becomes not
Exactly.
real. So
Yeah, and I wanted to bring you back because, again, many of us, especially those of us who love freedom and realize that these tyrants were being punitive, especially in your case, but they were just being little tyrants for no
yeah,
reason at all. And they were being very selective because while liquor stores were allowed to stay open,
strip clubs.
businesses like in strip clubs were allowed to stay open, fast food restaurants were allowed to stay open. But something that, especially now, we many of us saw it then, but especially now in hindsight, if any place should have been open, it should have been those places that promote healthy people losing weight. If you were morbidly obese and had diabetes and all of these other comorbidities, you certainly were susceptible to COVID like you would be to a heart attack, right? And so, if
Yep.
any places should have been open, it should have been gyms, places that not only promote physical well-being but mental well-being as well. And yet, you were deemed non-essential. You and your co-owner decided to give the finger to the powers that be, and you stayed open, fined well over $1 million, 80 different charges. I read that you were hit with. I mean, 80 charges. Did somebody die while they were in the gym?
You know what? Not a single person even got sick, and that's I don't
Yeah.
think that's any surprise to anybody that followed the story and that was paying attention. Yeah, we had 80 municipal citations. We had 5 criminal charges for each of us as
Wow.
well. We had all of the fines. We also had our business licenses revoked by the state, unlawfully, by the way. We had our locks changed twice. We were arrested. We were sort of persecuted in every way that the state could
Yeah.
come up with until they sort of punched themselves sort of out of air and they weren't able to keep the fight up. And now we're starting to see it fall apart, 4 years later.
Yeah. And I saw that, it is something interesting, right? Because when they want to persecute you, when you get into the crosshairs of the ones who are just behaving like little tyrants, everyone talks about you. Articles are written about you. You're dragged on glass across the
Hmm.
nation. You're labeled. You're excoriated. But then when something comes out in your favor, no one hears about it. It's like a whisper.
Yeah, yeah.
No one's
Certainly
talking
not
about it.
on mainstream, and
Yes.
I
And so
remember
that is,
the New
mhm.
York Post would write and the Washington Times would write about how horrible we are, and then years later, there's no follow ups to those when the House of Cards has fallen and is falling. They don't want to revisit these stories. They told us that we were going to be killing grandmas and that we were reckless and that we just needed to follow the science and all of these things. And then
Right.
the science shows what actually is. And they no longer want to talk about it. They want to just forget about it and move
Yes.
on to the next thing, as if they didn't ruin people's lives in
Wow.
in in a lot of ways for some people that set them on a completely different course, and that nobody deserved. Nobody in the middle and the lower class, the socioeconomic classes who felt COVID and lost their job or were pressured to take a vaccine or whatever it is. None of these people deserve this, and it permanently changed the course of a lot of people's lives. People lost their jobs. People did things that they didn't necessarily want to do, but they felt like their back was against the wall. And now none of these people want to talk about it. The media doesn't want to talk about it. I mean, for 2 years, they wouldn't shut up about COVID. It was, you look at some of these clips that circulate around now, and it's like the montage of newscasters and talking heads talking about how dangerous and reckless people were for not wanting to get vaccinated or not shutting down, and now it's just crickets.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy to see that people aren't letting it go. The people that the injustices were done to, a lot of the alternative media, the podcasters, and people who really were there for us at the gym, but were there for all of us, in terms of information and dialogue. It's good to see that that's not being let go by those people.
Yeah, I want to double click on a couple of things. But let me just say, one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on is because you have just won a very large, a very important case where all of the charges were dropped against you. Of course, this happened under the cover of darkness. No one really is talking about it. It just happened to pop up on my computer, and I was like, I want to talk to him about it. So you just won a really big case.
Yeah, so we wound up in 5 different courts through all of this. We were in municipal court, which is where all of these citations were. These citations were issued pretty much day one, all the way through month one, and then there was a little bit of time when they sort of stopped it, and then they resumed, and then they did it again. And the charges vary. There's violation of a governor's orders. There's public nuisance, public endangerments, zoning violations, operating without a business license, all sorts of just sort of silly charges. And most of those are 4 years old. But the state knew that those charges didn't really mean anything. I mean, there's there's no punch behind those things. That they're like traffic tickets.
Right.
So at that point, early on, about a month into the saga in 2020, Governor Murphy took those charges, those municipal charges, and then he took a health department shutdown, which we ignored, and then his executive order. And he took those 3 things, and then he went to a state judge in the state courts. And in New Jersey, our judges are appointed and not elected, so they answer to politicians and not to people. So he went to this judge, who just so happened to be up for tenure that year, and did get it, obviously. And he said, I need a court order. And that is where a lot of the tangible, really punitive measures came from. The $15,000 a day fine. They went in and emptied our bank accounts. They went after my personal assets. All of these things, the arrests, the criminal charges. We were held in criminal contempt of court on 5 different charges each, and that carried 5 years in prison. So all of that stuff came from this court order, but the court order is based on these municipal charges and us violating the order. So after 4 years, we've been fighting in all these different court battles in state court at the criminal level, in state court at the civil level, in 2 different courts, in appeals court, and then also at the municipal level. And these charges have not been touched. The state and the township would not issue any discovery. They would not They would not show up to court. They wouldn't do anything. And the judge gave them more than ample time to get their stuff together and present some sort of case. And they didn't. And last month, it was April now. I believe it was April 24th. We had a court date, and the judge just upheld the law. She called a spade, and a strike, and a ball, a ball. She called it fair. And said that these men are having their rights violated, their right to a speedy trial, that this has been 4 years, and they have requested it. The courts have requested it. The prosecutor has requested some sort of information on how the state and the township wanted to proceed, and they never even sent a single piece of paper. So she dismissed all of the charges based on a violation of our right to a speedy trial. She did so with prejudice, which means that those cases cannot ever be revisited ever again for any reason.
Bravo.
So it was unequivocally dismissed. And then also some of those charges were dismissed on that premise, and also on the premise that the state and the township never had the authority to take our business licenses away. Because that was one of the really hard things, is that we took our stand, and then, we got into this battle with the state, and Governor Murphy took our business licenses 1 week before he reopened gyms, as a sort of an FU to us. And we had to operate for a full another year on donations because we couldn't legally operate a business. So all of that has been dismissed with prejudice, as I said, and that is a small but very, very, very significant victory. Like those charges, nobody was. I'm sorry, what did you say?
No, I was just going to ask you, do you feel like you've gotten justice?
Not yet. We're on our way, though. We are on our way. And it feels good to be vindicated, and it feels good to know that we were right. Even though we knew we were right back then, we wouldn't have done what we did had we had any doubt that what we were doing was the right thing. But so these charges weren't particularly a threat to us, because again, they're just kind of like traffic tickets. But
5 years in jail, the threat of being tossed in prison for 5 years, that certainly makes you stand up and look.
All of that other stuff came from these charges. So now what we had the capacity to do is go back and revisit the fines, the seizure of our assets, the criminal charges that we have against us, and we can now say, well, all of these charges are what you built this court order on, and the violation of the court order is where all of the punishments come from. So how valid now is your court order, if a part that you built the case on is now dismissed? So we have the ability to get some justice.
What about those criminal charges? Have they been dismissed also?
They have not been dismissed yet. Everything is one thing at a time. It's really sad, because the way that the system works is not designed to help you as an individual, especially when you're using the system to fight the state. It is the state's system. It's the state's game. You're playing by their rules. They will make the rules. They will break the rules. They will bend the rules. And they also know that in order to get any remedy or any justice, it is going to take you an immense amount of money and a lot of time. And because of that, most people can't weather that storm. And we were unbelievably fortunate and blessed by just amazing people all over, not even the state of New Jersey and the country, but all over the world. People contributed by buying T-shirts, and we were able to raise money to pay for this legal battle that was about $750,000 worth of lawyer fees, not including the fines and everything like that. And not everybody.
And it's so punitive. It's so insidious. Like, they know that in order that most people who would want to take a stand and push back, that we lack the ability to do so. A lot of people were forced to take the jab because you don't want to lose your job. You
Yeah.
have to have a job. Most people are not independently wealthy. And so it is a means of getting people to shut up, sit down, and do as you're told.
Oh yeah, exactly. And they're playing with unlimited resources. They're playing with your
Our tax
resources.
dollars, unlimited
Yes, exactly,
resources,
exactly.
being our tax dollars.
It's not only is it your tax dollars, but they'll just print more if they need it. Like
Yeah.
it's a very, very rigged game. But there is the opportunity for justice. It just does not come swiftly. But it certainly will come, and we will be pursuing the matters. We still have to talk. I have to speak with my legal team and kind of discuss options, but there are definitely options now for us. And the state knows that, and they've been very, very, very quiet. They haven't moved forward with anything that they've been doing. They've been sitting on an appeal for a long time because they don't really have a way out of it. And they can just kind of let it sit for as long as they want before we can really
Right.
force them. So, there's still a lot going on. So to answer your question, there's some justice, but not total justice. And there certainly will
Yeah.
be. And that's something that we just have to be patient and have faith, and kind of run the same plan that we've run. I I have learned to just be very, very patient and have faith that the right thing is going to happen, and that I just have to I have to sit and I have to wait, and I have to let these people shoot themselves in the foot, and they absolutely will, and they absolutely have. It's just a matter of time.
Well, now we see the government is beginning to do the fear mongering again. It's an election season. And so now we're beginning to hear the rumblings of another contagion, the bird flu this time. How do you think people will respond this time? Do you think we've learned anything from 2020?
I do. I definitely, definitely do. I don't think that something like that is in the cards for them as a reasonable option. I think that they'll try, and they'll sort of they'll rattle the cage a little bit and see people's responses. But in terms of another contagion, I think even your everybody other than the people still wearing masks is going to be like, no, we're not doing that again. You like most people, and I travel a lot and I speak a lot, and I'm sort of all over, in terms of my businesses and stuff. And so I talk to a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life, and most people are look back at COVID, and even if they believed it then, or they maybe weren't paying attention, most people look back and go, that was really stupid. Like that was, you
It
know, eh,
certainly cost a lot when you look at our children, when you
oh,
look at
absolutely,
the
absolutely.
suicide rates, the
Or what our
overdose rate,
economy
the
is doing, everything
businesses.
like that.
Yes, it
Yeah, and
certainly
and
cost a lot.
people, even if for people who are sort of apolitical, or who just aren't, as tuned in as a lot of the people that we know are, they look back at that. Like I have a very good friend, and he's just not a big politics guy, and he looks
Yeah.
back on that and he goes like, that was so stupid, like that was such a waste of our time. So I don't think that, and then again, you have parents, and again, like with parents, we're seeing it in our children,
Yeah.
the sort of just developmental stunting that we've seen, the social
Yeah.
stunting, the economy. I think that people won't be as likely to sort of jump headfirst into something. Sure, they might try it.
I am hopeful. I am hopeful, Ian.
I think, however, that they would have a much better luck with environmental lockdowns, and I think that that's something that they'll probably pursue more and probably get some more traction on, because there is a whole faction of people who won't make the connection between one type of lockdown and restrictions and another. So it's like a different thing for them. And there's new virtue signaling, and there's all sorts of excitement, and they can feel good and special about, climate change. So I think that if we see any sort of push down, or push for lockdowns or restrictions and regulations, that it will probably come in the form of climate, saving the world from extreme weather. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Well, we will see. But Ann, we are watching. You have not been forgotten. We are paying
Thank you.
very close attention. It was such an inspiration during those times. You know, what you were doing did not just impact you, as I'm sure you've heard so many people say, but it gave the rest of us courage to begin to stand up, speak up. I mean, I have a big mouth. Is what I was doing. None of it made sense to me. I just was not going to go along, but it certainly gave a shot of encouragement that this is the right thing, we're not alone. And I think that is so important when you're going through things like this, is to real
It is.
I think one of the key of lockdowns was isolation. You felt
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
And so to be able to look around and see other people out here fighting the good fight for freedom, and personal autonomy, it was, it was an encouragement to the rest of us. So thank you for your fight and for staying in it. And we are watching.
Well, thank you. And if I can leave you with one thing,
Yes.
if for anybody watching and anybody listening, you would have asked me 4.5 years ago if my choices, particularly my choice to open my business, would have the sort of impact on the world around me and people that it did. I would have said the same lie that we all tell ourselves, and it's a very dangerous and very destructive lie that we need to stop, sort of living. And that's, oh, I'm just one person.
Right.
What does it matter what I do? And
It
look at
matters.
what happened, and not only with me. I'm a popular story, but you never know who's watching you. You never know who's inspired by your actions. You never know who's right there with you, but maybe just needs to see somebody else take that step forward to inspire them and to give them the confidence. So never, ever, ever doubt the importance of your actions. And in
Right.
fact, not only don't doubt them, but realize how important your decisions are. It's not always as big and grand as like the gym fight was. But being that parent that won't mask their kids, or whatever it is, or being that lone employee that won't take a shot, or being that person who speaks up, does go a long, long way. And you don't need a big platform to make a big difference. So, if there's one
Awesome.
takeaway from that, I was just some obscure gym owner in a quiet suburb of South Jersey 4.5 years ago, and my simple choices made a huge impact not only on my life and the people that I love, but millions of people
Around the
around the
world.
country and the
Yeah.
world. So don't ever doubt that. That's something that is not unique to any individual. We all have that capacity within us.
I love it. What a wonderful way to end this particular show. Thank you, Ian, for being a part of today's show. To
Thank
everyone
you.
else, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you guys. I'm doing my part. You continue to do yours. Ian, stay right there. And blessings, everyone. Deuces. See you on the other side.